Well, welcome to you all. We're really happy to see you all here this evening. This is another event hosted by Event Happiness, the volunteers of Event Happiness. Of course, we also want to thank GSA for their support in helping to make this event possible. And yeah, we're really happy and excited, as you are, judging by the silent chatter there in the room, and to be here this evening. So for the rest of the evening, the lineup is that we'll have about 10 minutes of mantra meditation, then we'll have the presentation by Devamrita Swami, and then we'll have dinner. Yeah. So we'll start off with a bit of meditation. Maybe some of you, definitely the word meditation is not a foreign word nowadays. Yeah. Maybe some of you have even thought of doing meditation. Yeah. Maybe you would also think that I'm just too busy to meditate, even though I'm so busy and I really need it. Where do I find the time? Because sometimes one may think that meditation is something that you have to be somewhere really quiet, really isolated, all by yourself, just be very still for a very long time, and that we just don't feel that that's practical. But the type of meditation we'll be doing this evening is very practical and very accessible. And it's something we can do all together as well. It's a mantra meditation. So there's the mantra here behind me. This is a special spiritual sound vibration. And the aim of this mantra is to revive our original consciousness in relation to the Supreme Consciousness, Krishna. So it's very easy. Actually, let's read through it all together. Then gets the tongue rolling, and then it's easier to do it. So you can repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Yeah, amazing. That's a natural. Wow. So it's very, very easy. Bhakti here. We've got all the instruments, all the musicians lined up. So Bhakti will sing through the mantra, and then we all respond together, and then she sings again, and we respond, and it carries on like that for the next 10 minutes or so. Great.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
I can hear my frustration there. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming Devamrita Swami. He was born in New York and received one of the finest educations that man can buy, from Yale University. During his time as a student, he was a seeker, seeking out the best knowledge and the highest pleasure. And that quest drove him to, upon graduation, take up the lifestyle of a monk in the Bhakti-Yoga tradition. And so for the past 40 years, he's been traveling all around the world to every different continent, pretty much, meeting people from all different backgrounds, walks of life, ethnicities and cultures, and giving inspiration and assistance so that they can also experience the highest knowledge and the best pleasure. And he's an author of quite a few books, and he's been a lifestyle coach and a mentor for many thousands. When he's not traveling, New Zealand is his home. So please join me to welcome Devamrita Swami.
I've seen many of you before at our happiness event in March, so thank you for coming again. And of course we have some new faces here. I'm going to go deeper tonight than what we discussed in March. And even though you may not have heard our discussion in March, still, I think you'll find tonight very relevant for your trying to live life. That's what everyone's trying to do. But what is your struggle to live life all about? The Bhakti-Yoga Tax, originating millennia ago. No one can actually properly date their origin. The Bhakti-Yoga Tax, in presenting information at the top rung of the yoga ladder, explained that life as it's usually lived is about trying to attract happiness and beat back distress. Can you see yourself expending so much energy in that way? You want to be proactive about your happiness. And you want to be open and receptive to any happiness that comes your way unexpectedly. But meanwhile, you have to beat back distress. Why do those two go together, happiness and distress? In the prime yoga text, Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna describes that happiness and distress are dualities. That means they always come as a twosome. You can't have one without the other. Heat, cold, pleasure, pain, happiness, distress, health, sickness. This is the way life in the cosmos is packaged. The twosomes, the pairs, are always there. So if we strive for material happiness, we must also accept material distress. Everything comes in twos, dualities. So if you can visualize your life in a nutshell, you can see that so much of what we do involves trying to somehow or other attract or grab happiness, and we try to defeat distress. That's our modus operandi. But what about your life in of itself? It's not so easy, to think about your life. It's kind of too abstract, or it's too murky or unwieldy to kind of get your hands on it. If someone asks you, what about your life? What do you think? My life. Why is it so difficult to get a grip on your life? It's because you can't remember its beginning. No one here remembers taking birth. Probably the earliest in your life that you can remember is when you were 3 years old or 4 years old, maybe. Did you have an origin before your body was born? You don't know. But what about the end? You don't want to think about that. So here you have something coming out of nowhere and going to a destination that you don't want to think about. So obviously it's a little difficult grasping the midpoint. You've got an unknown beginning, and you've got an end that is also unknown, and more importantly, you don't want to think about it. So here we are trying to grapple with the middle. It's like you see an airplane in the sky, and you just accept the existence of that airplane up above, and you don't worry about where the airplane took off from, nor do you worry about where the airplane will land. Of course, everyone knows airplanes take off from somewhere and they land somewhere. But what about our life? How did our life take off, and where will it land? So again, we're up against a conceptual problem. And therefore we keep ourselves so busy striving for goals so that we actually don't confront the mystery of our life. Cognitive scientists have pointed out that the human brain likes to think in metaphors. So the best way to deal with something that's hard for you to get your mind around is a metaphor. What's an easy metaphor that you can use for your life? A journey. Everyone can relate to that. Yes, I'm going somewhere with my life. When you're talking to others and they ask you, what are you doing? You explain, this is the direction my life is heading in. Or if someone makes you angry and tries to unduly influence you, they try to insist that you should do this, do that. What's a good way that you usually respond? It's my life. How many of you can remember saying that to someone? Not so gently. It could have been someone who was very near and dear to you for a few weeks. Or it could have been a family member who was just minding your business too much. But it's my life. When you say that with such passion, it implies that you've got your grip on something that you're fully aware of. My life. Get your hands off of my life. Don't try to tell my life what to do. But then when we ask you, can you tell us about your life? It becomes difficult. But the journey, the metaphor of the journey, makes it easier. When you think about a journey going somewhere, you need knowledge of the terrain that you're traveling on, and you want nice people to travel with. I don't think anyone of you likes to travel alone forever for most of your life. You want good company. So those things become most important on your journey of life. What are my experiences as I'm moving through the universe? And who will I be with? We've got some problems, though, with that metaphor of life as a journey. Generally, when you're on a journey, You know when it began, and you know the destination. You can just think somehow that you go to Melbourne Airport and you get on a plane, any flight will do. And you're sitting on the plane, mid-flight, and you're totally caught up in the entertainment system, and you're eating the lousy airline's food, and you strike up a conversation with someone sitting next to you. You get totally into the moment on the flight. But someone asks you, so what will you do at your destination? Destination, huh? I'm just enjoying the flight. I don't know actually where the flight is going. And it's not important where it began. Let's just be on this journey. You would never travel like that. But this is how we live life. We don't know when the journey began or where, and we really don't want to think about the end, so we just get caught up in the moment. We get caught up in the entertainment system on the plane and whoever's sitting on this side or that side of us. We get caught up in the food, and that's it. So when you want to consider your life as a journey, you're taking a responsibility. But are there other ways that we can think of our life? Other metaphors? Perhaps some of you have heard me explain two other prominent possibilities. And then we'll get to a third possibility that's often not chosen. Besides a journey, you can consider your life to be a race. You're striving to achieve, you're competing against others. I was just in the USA last week, and the race metaphor is very popular there. Not that everyone loves the fact that they're racing, pursuing happiness, but they realize they're forced to do that. It's not as intense here in Australia, the land of no worries. Life in the USA, we'll talk about it for a few moments. It's always good to talk about some other place, you know. I make it a policy that when I'm traveling, I never criticize the place where I'm speaking. So when I'm in Australia, I talk about the USA. When I'm in the USA, I talk about the UK. But anyway, I was speaking in the USA past couple of months, and I pointed out to the audience that, did you know that according to the ranking of the World Health Organization, the WHO, the USA is amongst the least happy countries in the developed world. But the situation doesn't end there. Not only is it one of the least happy nations in the first world, but by a wide margin, it is #1 in anxiety. So I try to explain to the people, how could this enormous anxiety problem be there? And then I give them some numbers. Say, my dear Americans, you make up 4% of the world's population, but almost 40% of the world's military spending. You make up 4% of the world's population, but you consume 80% of the opioids in the world. Maybe those numbers indicate there's some problems. There are some problems with life as a race. Running, competing. What's the worst thing? that can happen to you in a race. Not simply that you're a loser. Generally, when you race, you want to come out to be number one. You'll settle for number 2, silver medal, bronze medal, number 3. The worst thing, though, is not losing. The worst thing is stumbling and falling in the race. Can you identify with that fear? Because what happens if you stumble and fall in the race? Not only do you lose, but everyone tramples you. Isn't that a horrible feeling? So this is the paranoia that life as a race brings. That race syndrome, running the race, is present in Australia, not as intensely as it is in the USA, but it's still there. When I'm speaking in China, anyone here from China? Yes. I teach them a special mantra, and they all appreciate it. This is a very appropriate mantra for China. A mantra is a special sound that encapsulates deep meaning. Of course, the Hare Krishna mantra that you all have been singing is not an ordinary sound. But just to highlight a certain point about the race, racing for happiness, racing for success. When I'm in China, I teach a special mantra, so to speak. Work, buy, consume, die. And I have the audience repeat that. Work, buy, consume, die. And they agree. Yes, this is unfortunately our slogan. This is the way we live life. It's the race. What other options do you have for metaphors so you can conceive of your life? We've talked about the journey. We've talked about the race. But there's also the ladder. Maybe some of you have dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, climbing the academic ladder. What happens, though, when you get to the top, if you actually get there? Most persons don't get to the top rung of the ladder. But if you happen to be one of those rare ones who gets to the top, you find out it's very lonely up there. Because by definition, the top of the ladder, very few attain that. That's why it's the top of the ladder. But you may get to that top. And then you look around and there's no one else there with you. And furthermore, you start to think, was it worth it? I climbed to the top. Did I really achieve satisfaction? But once you're at the top of the ladder, if you get there, which most don't, it's very difficult to climb down because of social expectations. People think, you've made it. You've gone to the top of the ladder. You've got everything. Meanwhile, you're miserable. This reminds me of something the comedian, the late Robin Williams, said. He was world famous for his comedy. And he walked off of a set one night to thunderous applause. The crowd was on their feet applauding his comic routine. So as he walked off, he turned to a fellow comedian who happened to be in the audience and said, "Isn't it amazing that I can make everyone happy and I myself am miserable? Isn't that amazing?" And then a few years later, he took his own life, much to everyone's astonishment. The man had everything: fame, fortune, a loving wife. So these kind of incidents make you wonder, is it worth climbing the ladder? But I would like to suggest a better metaphor for your life. This metaphor is given in the Bhakti-Yoga Tax. Think of your life, plan your life to be like a tree. What is special about a tree? It gives shelter to everyone by its shade. It gives resources to everyone in terms of its fruits, its flowers, its bark, its sap. A tree is so generous, and it asks for nothing in return. So dare to consider your life as a tree. Indeed, this is the kind of life that the yoga texts recommend. Act in such a way that others can get the highest benefit from you, and then your life is successful. But how do people get the highest benefit from you? And what is the highest benefit? Often we say that no one really knows. So how do you expect me to know when no one knows? This is what I call, maybe some of you have heard it before, the resignation theory. That I didn't make the world this way. I'm not responsible for the way the world is. I'm just trying to survive. I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying not to hurt so many people. What do you want out of my life? What do you want from me? I didn't make the world this way. So in this way, we diffuse responsibility. Responsibility is not on my shoulders. I'm just trying to survive. We can adopt that point of view. But we can choose to go deeper. But going deeper requires knowledge of what is the ultimate benefit. And that is what the Bhakti-Yoga texts specialize in. The first thing, for example, in Bhagavad-Gita, the prime Bhakti-Yoga text, Krishna explains that if you want to benefit others, you have to know who the others are. Are they the body? Are they the mind? Or are they something beyond the body and mind? Are they something beyond mere physiology and psychology? How can we benefit others? How can we care for others? How can we love others if we don't know what is the nature of the self? So this is the first lesson that Krishna teaches in Bhagavad-Gita. The difference between the body and the owner of the body. Once we understand that, then we can start thinking how to truly care for others and love others. Otherwise, if we're just dealing with their externals, their packaging, we'll never really connect with their core being. I'm sure quite a few of you have had that experience in trying to love someone deeply. It's like you can't really get a grip physiologically and psychologically on their core. And it even gets frustrating after a while. There just can't seem to be that ultimate connection. Or when you think you've connected with someone, that so-called connection lasts only a short time. It's very important for us to understand how to truly benefit others. Because without being able to do that, we become very selfish, cynical, skeptical, and exploitative. Why exploitative? Because we think, look, I don't know who I am, you don't know who you are, but so what? Let's just try to please our own senses. And that involves manipulation, control. There's an interesting reality that the Bhakti-Yoga texts, the Krishna conscious texts, point out. In order for you to enjoy, you must control. Material enjoyment must always be coupled with efforts to materially control. Because you have to shape situations, you have to shape persons so that they are favorable to your own conceptions of happiness and pleasure. This is so prevalent that it seems natural. And we're very subtle about it. In the name of love, in the name of caring, we want to shape the situation so that we get something in return. Even just appreciation, harmless appreciation. Still, there's some control involved. Let me act in such a way, put more bluntly, let me control in such a way that I will feel appreciated. So this is the problem with material happiness. It always involves attempts to control. Let's talk more about the problems with material happiness. Because remember, the best metaphor I recommend is the tree. The tree is always giving benefit. But if we don't know what the best benefit is, then we'll try to control in the name of enjoyment. Some persons say that happiness is not an ultimate destination. It's all about the appreciation of the journey. It's not about getting to some destination from the journey. It's about just appreciating the journey. You see, many persons have the idea that happiness is all about acquisition and achievement. Maybe you're one of those. Social scientists have terminology for this, of course. You have persons who are called the strong linkers. They see a very strong link between achievement, acquisition, and happiness. So, complete correlation, no doubt about it. If I achieve this goal, if I acquire this, accumulate that, I will be happy. Those are the strong linkers. And just see a continuum. At one pole are the strong linkers. On the other end are the no linkers. Now, no correlation between achievement, acquisition, and happiness. Generally, people are somewhere in the middle. No one wants to admit to being a strong linker. Everyone wants to present themselves as being very mellow and moderate. I have some goals, but nothing unusual. I want some things, but I'm moderate, modest, humble. And the other people, they are the materialists. What's the definition of a materialist? Rule of the thumb, convenient definition. A materialist is anyone who has more than me. They are the materialists. I have just what I need and could use a bit more. But the others, the greedy ones, they are the materialists. How does Krishna define a materialist in Bhagavad-Gita? Very important for us to know. That authoritative yoga text describes a materialist as not simply someone who's filthy rich or just blazingly egotistical. No. Krishna describes that a materialist is one, whether rich or poor, is one who thinks, I am the body and mind. That is a materialist. Never mind how much money you have, or your acquisitions, or how big your house is. Never mind whether you're rich or poor. If you think the body and mind are the self, then you're a materialist. So you could be a rich materialist or a poor materialist. It's all about what you identify as the self, because how you consider the self will determine how you act for happiness. there's some problems with the quest for material happiness. I'll give you a few statistics. From the year 1950 to the year 2000, let's beat up on the USA again. In 50 years, between 1950 and the year 2000, the purchasing power of the average American citizen increased threefold. But social scientists have pointed out that their happiness, as measured by standard indicators, their happiness at best remained the same or even went down a little, although the purchasing power has tripled. So that makes you wonder, what's going on here? If acquisition, accumulation, and wealth makes everyone happy, why didn't their happiness triple along with their purchasing power? There doesn't seem to be a correlation between material achievement, accumulation, and happiness. But we think it to be. So if you're smart, you want to try to understand, how is it we think it's so? And the yoga text explain there is such a thing as illusion. In Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna explains that there's an illusory energy that bewilders. You hallucinate. You see something that's actually not existent. You see the possibilities for material happiness, and then we become willing to struggle. Just like a fly buzzing around the room. The fly detects that there's a piece of toast on your table, and the toast is covered with jelly, jam. The fly lands on the piece of toast covered with jam, honey, whatever. The fly is attracted. And of course, as soon as the fly lands on the honey or jam-covered toast, the fly is caught. And the more the fly struggles, the worse it becomes. So we become like that. We see material happiness. I know it exists. And others convince us. So let's try to understand how we've been fooled. I didn't want to say duped, because that sounds too strong. How we've been fooled. See, there is such a thing as social comparison. It plays an enormous role in societies today, especially with all the social media. Your satisfaction is relative in that it depends on what others around you have and how they're feeling. You're not an absolute entity in of yourself. Your happiness, your feeling of satisfaction depends on what you see around you. Social research has been done to demonstrate that, let's say, you're making $50,000 a year, and everyone in your neighborhood or all your family members, all your friends are making $50,000. That's one thing. But what if you're making $100,000 a year and persons around you are making $150,000? You have doubled your purchasing power, but you're in more anxiety. Even though your own purchasing power has doubled, because others are making more than you, you feel worse than when you were making $50,000 a year. If any of you want to know a cutting-edge field to specialize in, it's behavioral economics, a combination of psychology and economics. They've calculated. Again, we'll look at the USA. It's easy to speak about the USA. for every dollar that your income increases, your expectations increase by $1.40. So you're thinking, oh, if I only would make more money, then I'd be happier. So then you make more money, and then your expectations keep escalating. Oh, but if I only... it never ends. This is called the hedonic treadmill. Hedonic or hedonistic treadmill. You're running, you're running, you're running, and you don't get anywhere. You just keep running. Social comparison means you look around and see. Others look happy. Why am I not getting happiness? And you have this assumption that the world owes you fulfillment. Can you catch yourself doing that? It's my life. I'm living in this world. Therefore, fulfillment should come to me. When is it going to come? And then others are getting it. I can look around and see. They must be happy. Why am I not happy? So then you become so burdened by the quest for happiness. You feel so guilty if you're not happy. I know so many of you here can relate to this. You've been implanted with this syndrome that I've got to be happy at every moment. It's like you're a walking happy-o-meter. And it's been 5 minutes. Am I happy yet? And you evaluate your relationships with others in that way, right? I've been with you for 1 hour. Have you made me happy? Some years ago, in the USA, the most popular bumper sticker was simply this: "Are we having fun yet?" Very profound. But that gives you insight into basic anxiety. I have to be entertained at every moment. You have to be making me happy. And you're always in anxiety about this burden to be happy. You're asking yourself at every moment, am I happy now? Will I be happy in the next few minutes? Even if you're with a person who seems to be pretty good, you know, nice partner, you can't be peaceful, right? What are you thinking? Is this really the one for me? Right? Right? Is this partner making me as happy as I should be? You have to always have this self-doubt. I'm not happy enough. Am I happy enough? Even in a so-called ideal situation, you're asking yourself that question. That's why people get intoxicated. When they get intoxicated, they can stop that whole chatter going on in their mind. Am I happy? Why am I not happy? And then when it comes to your work, your career, your occupation, you have to ask yourself, am I doing what I love? Right? Isn't that the dream? You get the job, and it's what you have a passion for. See? Well, that's the way it's supposed to work out, right? You're supposed to be with the person who always makes you happy, and you're supposed to be doing what you're passionate about and doing what you love. And throughout your whole life, you carry this burden, this monkey on your back. Am I happy? Am I as happy as others are happy? So social comparison plays a great role in this. There are two ways that the social comparison works. One is called upward comparison. The other, of course, is downward. Upward comparison supposedly fills you with anxiety, because upward means you're looking at those above you who have more than you. And therefore, you resent that. Or at least you feel that I'm missing out. This is why, as many of you know, the social media has caused such a surge in depression. Because People on social media don't share their depression. They share their so-called peak moments. And that makes you feel like, oh, everyone else is having a good time. What about me? No one gets on the social media and says, I'm bored stiff. No, they show you, video clips and photos of, their peak moments. And so actually, social scientists have studied that the social media has increased the depression because people become convinced everyone else is happy except me. So therefore, you have this upward comparison. Now, materially, I don't recommend this, but a materialist would recommend downward compassion. You'll feel good by seeing others who are less fortunate than you. And that is given as one reason why you should engage in volunteer work and charity work. You get a bonus. It's not simply that you're helping others, but by seeing their less fortunate situation, you can feel better about yourself. So that's called downward comparison. So what's holding this whole scheme together, this network of social comparison? There's something called the Brotherhood Mentality. Brotherhood referring to both men and women. That, look, we're all in this together, and you have a responsibility to the whole group to maintain your race for material happiness. You have a responsibility to your group members to climb that ladder. Don't try to drop out. You have to do your share of social responsibility. This is the brotherhood effect. And then you have other syndromes you have to deal with. This is what the yoga texts describe as conditioned life. You've taken aboard so many physical and mental conceptions which you identify as your own. And we refuse to consider what is the destination of all this. In fact, it's recommended that, materially, it's recommended that you don't think of destinations. You don't think of the past and you don't think of the future, because that will disturb your enjoyment of the moment. Just take each moment as it comes without any judgment, and don't invest energy in worrying about the past or the future. I have to tell you that this advice, which is so popular, runs totally against the knowledge of the yoga system. It seems counterintuitive, though. Why wouldn't it be that by considering the future, by considering the past, why wouldn't it be that my present becomes ruined? Wouldn't it be better to get into the flow of this moment, be one with the music, do something that you can be totally absorbed in? Isn't that the best you can do in this world? And if you start thinking about what's the ultimate destination of your life and what's the beginning of your life, you could be missing out on the pleasures that you could have right at the moment. But what the Bhakti Yoga knowledge explains is that when you have knowledge of both the destination and the origin, your moment, your present moment becomes transformed. So instead of fearing knowledge of the destination and the origin, and just trying to lock yourself up into the present moment, a present moment stripped of any connection to the past and the future, if you know what is the goal, what's the destination, and if you know what is the origin, then your moments, your present moments are different. This is a very unique contribution that the ancient Bhakti Yoga knowledge gives. How to master the present by having full knowledge of the past and the future. In other words, when you know your destination, that knowledge of your destination will transform your journey. When you're on a trip somewhere, you know where you're going. And that knowledge of your destination shapes your journey. But some other people have this idea in their mind that it will disturb your well-being and happiness if you spend too much energy on thinking of your future and your past. It ruins the enjoyment of the present moment. Well, from one point of view, that's true. In other words, material happiness is so shaky that if you start thinking deeply about it, it does get ruined. But you should take that in another way. Instead of, okay, I don't want to know about anything deeper because it'll ruin my enjoyment of the present. Why not instead think, if I get the most comprehensive, profound spiritual knowledge, I will be able to actually understand what is enjoyment of the present moment. In other words, it's not true that ignorance is bliss. It's not true that what you don't know won't hurt you. So this is the special contribution that the knowledge Krishna gives in Bhagavad-Gita. As I said, the prime yoga text. This is the advantage it gives. How to understand your non-material identity as part of the supreme spiritual identity. In this way, understanding your non-material self, you become immune to all kinds of external material influences. You can see more and more how manipulated people are due to the effect of the media, social media, this media, that media. How can anyone retain natural intelligence amidst such bombardment? But the path of the yogi is especially attractive today because the Bhakti Yoga knowledge teaches you how to be truly untouched by all the social conditioning that is flooding everywhere around you. And it's natural to succumb to it. Everywhere in the world, people tell me that. Hey, Swami, what do you want out of our life? You know, it's just too much, all this stuff out there. You got to be affected. You got to go with the flow at least sometime. How do you know? How do you learn? Where's the knowledge for how to be in the world, but not of the world? This is high spiritual technology. How to live in the material world, in a material body, without being affected. That's the kind of information that Krishna is giving in Bhagavad-Gita. Otherwise, we'll fall victim to social comparison and we'll start hallucinating. I see something known as material happiness. I'm sure it's there. Everyone else is trying for it. The genuine yogi, the genuine meditator, understands never pursue material happiness. And don't worry about material distress. Live your life as best you can with the focus on spiritual development. And then, even though you're in a body of matter, in a world of matter, you're tapping into a different dimension. Your present moment becomes transformed. So please consider how it's possible for you to have different options. Because you want to be happy, but maybe we don't know what real happiness is. Maybe we've been sold something that's completely artificial and a complete concoction. So this is why Krishna explains about rising above both material distress and material happiness. Bhagavad-Gita explains them both to be mental concoctions. But that's very hard to accept unless you know something better. so I won't push it too much. It sounds threatening, doesn't it? Wait a minute. We agree we don't want distress, but what's wrong with material happiness? Come on, Swami, again, give us a break, you know. But it's my duty to inform you that there's something beyond both material happiness and distress. There is that spiritual pleasure that comes from the ultimate connection, the love supreme. And that is the pinnacle of the yoga ladder. The yoga ladder, as I often explain, begins with the physical postures, the asanas, the breathing exercises, the pranayama. The purpose of those preliminary rungs on the yoga ladder is to give you clarity of mind so that you can start to consider what is the ultimate goal in life. And then that ultimate goal is about the pure relationship, the pure spiritual relationship between you, the tiny particle of spiritual consciousness, and the supreme consciousness, the love supreme. But that's the top rung of the yoga ladder. First, we have to understand how we're different from matter, different from the body and mind. And that knowledge will change our pursuit of happiness. We won't become victimized anymore by dreams, hallucinations of material happiness. And it's amazing. One final point. It's amazing that again and again we fall victim to the same thing. If I would only have this, if my partner was only a bit more vivacious, if I had just a bit more money, or when I graduate from the uni, or when I get the job that's my passion, or when I go on my overseas experience, there's always something else, something else, something else. We want satisfaction, but we're looking in the wrong place for it. So the crux of the genuine yoga system is all about subtracting you from illusory happiness and attaching you to real happiness, changing your platform from material to spiritual. So those are some thoughts I wanted to share with you tonight. Be brave. Some of you can do it. Be bold. Question, consider. Who gave me this mission to be materially fulfilled? Why do I think the world owes me a favor? The world owes me fulfillment, completion, satisfaction. Who told me that? Maybe I'm looking for water in the desert. But there's nothing wrong in looking for water, but you have to look in the right place. You want pleasure, you want satisfaction, but it won't come from material interaction. We have that desire for pleasure because we are part of the supreme pleasure. We are part of Krishna. Krishna means the unlimitedly attractive source of pleasure. Like particles of gold from a gold mine, we are spiritual particles, part of the complete spiritual whole. And there's a relationship between the two. So yoga at its topmost level means the connection between the tiny spiritual particle and the infinite spiritual conscious source. The relationship between the two in Sanskrit is called bhakti, the pinnacle of the yoga system. The love supreme, the exchanges, the reciprocation of pure, non-material love between the part and the complete whole. We remember that, and that's why we're striving for pleasure in the wrong place. There's nothing wrong with striving for pleasure, but we're just looking for it in the wrong place. So how to connect our pleasure-seeking motivations with their true object? That is the deepest purpose of the yoga and meditation system. Not to crush your desires for pleasure, but to redirect them, get them off the material plane to a higher level. As Albert Einstein once said, a problem is never truly solved on the same level that it originated. If you want to solve a problem, especially an existential problem, you've got to go to a higher level. So please consider your life as a tree, how you can give real benefit and love to others. First, we have to benefit ourselves with real knowledge and a transformational lifestyle. Then we can be our best for others. Otherwise, we'll just be part of the, what I call mass consensual trance. I don't know what the purpose of the journey is, and actually we shouldn't even be thinking about the purpose of the journey. Just be in the moment. Just try to be happy some kind of way, and don't hurt too many persons, and try to fulfill yourself and do what you're passionate about, and that's about all there is. We can do much better than that. The knowledge exists, that ancient yoga wisdom exists, the lifestyle information exists. We put the two together and we'll get experience of the non-material reality and the non-material happiness. Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions. Okay. If anyone has a few questions. You listen so attentively, I thank you. Yes.
You're reading the news. What are you thinking about the news around the world? And how do you feel when it's very sad, that moment when you see all the bombs, all the fight, all the wars? What are you thinking about that?
Yeah. When I was in the USA a few weeks ago, I pointed out to them, this is the first anniversary of the biggest non-nuclear bomb that was dropped. Last year, April in 2017, a conventional bomb, the biggest in human history, was dropped on a tiny village in Afghanistan because the word was out that there were some tunnels underneath the ground used by terrorists. So you say, all right, well, the military has to do what they have to do. But do you know how much the bomb cost? $1.2 million US for one bomb. Dropped on a tiny village. So yes, that makes you very sad. All right, it's the biggest non-nuclear bomb dropped in human history. All that money. So yes, I'm affected by those kind of things. But I also know the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is ignorance of what is the real self. Ignorance of our spiritual identity. We think we're independent in this world. We're independent controllers and enjoyers. We think that. And therefore we can do what we like in order to get our way. We do that as individuals and we do that as nations. So you have all these billions of human beings thinking, I am the controller and enjoyer. I am this body, I am this mind, and I want to satisfy my body and mind, and therefore there's competition, there's strife, because illusion is you. You're thinking you're the body and mind. The illusion brings about more illusion. You're doing something that's reducing the pleasure of my body and mind. You are the enemy. And so this is what's going on. The problem can't be solved materially. This is why the ancient yoga wisdom is so important. It leads to transformation. on the individual scale and on the mass scale. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay? Anything? Yes.
Hi. What are your thoughts on current practice of mindfulness, which practice of mindfulness?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on it in terms of like the contemporary version that pushes towards the practice of meditation, but it doesn't have any, let's say, religious content or dogmatic?
I actually don't like the word religious. It's, it implies belief. When I'm speaking at universities, I often point out that I'm not here to pile religious beliefs on your head. And nowhere in Bhagavad-Gita does Krishna ask you to believe anything. Everywhere in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, here's the process to experience what I'm saying. In other words, enter the bhakti laboratory and get the results. So I stay away from the word religious because it means, okay, what do you want us to believe? Then everyone goes to sleep. And people have the understanding that religious beliefs lead to a lot of unnecessary fighting, strife. So I stay away from that term. But your question about mindfulness, you can be a terrorist and be very mindful, very fully focused. So simply being mindful is not the attainment that you're looking for. So to become more aware of the present moment, that is not the goal of human consciousness. But you see, people are so stressed out these days that you can't blame them for wanting some relief. All right, mindfulness will reduce the stress, but it doesn't get to the root of stress. The root of the stress is misidentification of the body and mind as the self. And forgetting the holistic situation. Forgetting that we are parts of the Supreme in relationship with the Supreme. So yes, mindfulness is very popular, but we have to consider what is the best focus for your mind. Not simply be mindful. There are master criminals who are very mindful. They can do amazing things in terms of nefarious criminal deeds just by an extreme power of concentration. Still, I can understand why mindfulness is attractive, because people are so stressed out. Maybe not in Australia. When I'm speaking in the USA, I remind the students that millennials, those between the ages of 18 and 32, are the most stressed out generation in history. So, if someone wants to try to reduce their stress, I can appreciate that. But why don't we figure out what the root cause is? And the yoga texts, the yoga wisdom, especially what you find in Bhagavad-Gita, will get to that root. Otherwise, it's like you've got a tumor, and let's say I've got a tumor on my hand, and I think by blowing on it, it'll solve the situation. No, you got to take the tumor out. I don't know, maybe if you had a tumor on your hand and you blew on it, it would feel a little better, but that doesn't solve the situation. So better than being mindful is understand what is the ultimate object of mindfulness, the ultimate object of meditation. That kind of information you'll find in depth in Bhagavad-Gita. Okay? Yes?
The quest of pursuing happiness by associating oneself with the Supreme Consciousness, I'm just wondering, how do we disassociate ourselves from the body and mind in the first place? for us to be able to connect.
That's why the Maha mantra is so important. You do it predominantly through sound vibration. Sound will put you into illusion. That's where you heard all about material happiness, right? Through sound. If you want to enjoy, you do like this. You want to be happy, you do like that. Similarly, sound can free you from all those hallucinations. So this is why the Maha mantra meditation, which is prescribed in the yoga text, is so important. Otherwise, it is very difficult. You may be very intelligent, and you can understand this is illusion, this is temporary, this is eternal, this is real. You may be able to figure all that out, but still you'll fall victim to the illusion because you're too tiny, you're too small. You have to take shelter of something bigger. Someone over there had a question? Yes, right next to you. Yes.
Hi, Swami. Thank you very much for your talk. You make often reference to the past 50 years, but where do you see the future going? Where do you see this generation, the millennial generation, in 50 years' time, with rising depression, anxiety?
Yes. It's a crisis indeed. But there are signs that some are waking up. They're understanding that we're inheriting a world that's a mess. You're inheriting the results of intergenerational tyranny. That means the previous generation didn't care about the state of the world it's leaving to its children and grandchildren. You can especially see that in terms of the environment. So the millennials can see all these massive problems. Some are starting to wonder, we need something more than just typical material solutions. Reminds me of my years at Yale University. My professors allowed me to study whatever I wanted. Will they allow that at Melbourne Uni? Yes? Okay. So why did they allow me to study whatever I wanted? Because I told them my goal in studying was to find a solution to all the world's problems. I said, oh. And they actually told me that's what a university is actually for students like you. And they confess that we wish we would have done the same thing when we were young students, but we didn't have the courage. So I said, okay, study whatever you like to try and solve the world's problems. And if you do find a solution, come back and let us know. So I tried this and that and the other, trying to get to the bottom of the human mess. And then finally I could see there's no material solution. I have to go to a higher level. So many millennials are coming to this conclusion, but they don't want religious belief. You believe this, I believe that, so what? But the yoga wisdom, the ancient yoga wisdom, when genuinely taught, highlights our identity problem. That we consider ourselves matter and that the mission of our life is to exploit matter, whether in the form of plastic, silicon chips, flesh, whatever. You've got to manipulate the matter and then you can squeeze out happiness. So yes, the millennials to some degree are starting to wake up because they have to deal with the mess. They have to deal with the environmental problems, the economic problems, the social problems. This is why I travel and speak, looking for persons who want to really make a difference and will become qualified to make a difference. You see, the whole world is full of persons who want to love and care without getting the qualification to do so. An example I often give. Let's say you have a heart problem, some heart disease, and I feel for you. I feel compassion for you, and I say, let me operate on you. Everything will be all right. I feel such care and concern. Let me operate on your heart. Well, your first question would be, what's your qualification? No, but that's not the point. I care. I love. Feel that. Feel my heart, how I want to help your heart. No, you want to know my qualification. So similarly, although there are many persons in the world who want to care and love, they won't take the time or trouble to become qualified to care and love. That's the first point Krishna makes in Bhagavad-Gita. If you want to be truly compassionate, then get the knowledge, get the expertise, get the experience. Just like if you want to be a surgeon, go to school, become qualified. So my hope is that there'll be some who want to take the path of genuine yogis, genuine meditators, become qualified to give the greatest benefit to others, just like a tree gives shelter and shade to everyone. Anything on that side? Yes?
Thank you, Swami. So we are all living in this material world, and you also suggest that we should look for that other level, right?
Yeah.
So would you suggest us for living our careers, living our family to find the path? Or how can we balance both things, like living in this material world and also look for that other life?
Very good question. When you read Bhagavad-Gita, and I hope you will, you'll find that Krishna spoke this yoga knowledge not to a Swami or a yogi in the caves of the Himalayas. Krishna spoke Bhagavad-Gita to a family person, just to show that the yoga knowledge is for everyone. So yes, there's a way you can have a family. There's a way you can work it so that you can actually make spiritual advancement while apparently engaged in ordinary activities. This is the Bhakti-Yoga system. How to offer all that you do in pure love. Even your occupation, even your family. Everything is the energy of the Supreme. How to connect everything for Krishna's pleasure. That is the ultimate attainment of the yoga system. So yes, as a family member you can do that. As a working person you can do that. Most Bhakti Yoga practitioners are not Swamis, by the way. Very few are. Just like there are so many students at Melbourne Uni, how many of them become lecturers? Very few. But still you need some lecturers, right? So similarly you need some Swamis. We're like specialists. But very few persons become specialists. I wanted to be a specialist. I wanted to specialize in the highest pleasure. As you may have heard from the beginning, I'm from New York, and New Yorkers, they think they have the best, they know about the best. So my friends always considered that I was a pleasure lover. I always knew where the best cafes, clubs, concerts, I knew where all that stuff was. But I started to think, if I have no idea of pleasure that has no beginning or end, how can I be a true pleasure lover? My reputation is not justified. So therefore, I decided to specialize in the highest pleasure. And I'm here to share the benefits. So it's not just a selfish pursuit. I've been traveling on every continent of the world for over 40 years. I'm trying to be like that tree that gives benefit to everyone. Trying. But again, my answer to your question is that most Bhakti Yoga practitioners are family persons. That means, as a family, they're partners in enlightenment, rather than simply partners in control and temporary enjoyment. They're partners in enlightenment. They're family, but the family has a different goal. Okay? All right, how are we doing for time here? We don't want you to miss dinner. Huh?
Maybe one question, last question.
Where's the microphone? All right, you're close to him.
We've sort of been circling my question over the last couple, but I quite like your metaphor for the tree. I think that's a very high purpose that people can have, especially us young people. But I think the reality that a lot of us encounter day to day is one not so much of effortless growing as a tree, but rather it's more like a servant. We're sort of grinding and hustling every day at uni. And a lot of us are going to be going into exam period soon.
So is it a race or is it a ladder?
Well, I think it's a life of servitude. That's the way I sort of see it at the moment. And unfortunately, that's not so pleasant at times. And I'm wondering how you rationalize that. And you know, one of the words in this event tonight was purpose. And it seems to me that purpose and responsibility go hand in hand. And unfortunately, responsibility isn't always the highest bliss, as you say. So how does one live a life like that?
You have to decide, where did you get your goals from? Have they been downloaded into you from somewhere else? Everyone has some conceptions, some assumptions, some goals that they've taken on board. So you have to backtrack and analyze, why are you motivated the way you're motivated? Whether you think that it's proper or not, you should backtrack and check out those motivations that have been downloaded into you. Remember the social comparison and the brotherhood effect? You have a responsibility for others in the group. Don't try to break out. You owe it to yourself to come to grips with all that mass consensual trance. And then decide, do you want to go on in the matrix, to use a popular example, or is there another option? You need knowledge to do that. And you also need experience of a higher reality. Without that experience of the higher reality, you'll never let go of the inferior reality, the illusion. So you have to ask some questions of yourself, rather than proceed like many do, living on autopilot. You're marching to a beat that someone else has given. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not saying, okay, you understand? But at least recognize you're dancing to someone else's tune. Now, if you're going to be satisfied like that, that's up to you to decide. But recognize it's someone else's tune and someone else's beat. If you want to reclaim your true individuality, you can't do that materially. That's why Bhagavad-Gita recommends transformational lifestyles. How to be in the world but not of the world. How to interact with the world in a completely different way, while you're working, studying, having relationships. Your interior dimension is totally different, though. Think about it. All right, we're going to end with a little Maha Mantra chanting. just a few minutes, if you can indulge me. I'll sing a very simple tune, just for a few minutes. Please join in, it'll certainly do you no harm. Many of you sang so nicely at the beginning, so I'm looking for your support now. Same thing as the beginning. I'll sing, and then you please respond, just for a few minutes. And then we'll have dinner. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Very nice. Thank you very much.